Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Rankin, and I'm the Manager of Advocacy, Research, and Education with OASW. It's just so exciting to get to see everyone here today and to engage with our members. Usually we're up in our little offices, and it's nice to be out to say hello to everyone today. I also have the great pleasure of introducing our guest speaker, Dr. Lauren McEnroy, to you all. A little bit about Dr. McEnroy. She earned her MSW and PhD at the University of Toronto and is currently an assistant professor in the College of Social Work at Ohio State University. Dr. McEnroy's research investigates the impacts of information and communication technologies on the well-being of marginalized adolescents and emerging adults in Canada and the United States, particularly LGBTQ+ youth. In fact, Dr. McEnroy is currently a co-investigator on a major social sciences and humanities Research Council of Canada grant investigating that very topic. I first became familiar with Dr. McEnroy's work well over a year ago when I was searching for an expert in the field of social work and technology who could speak to a couple of key issues, namely the rapid spread of digital technology, the monumental shift in contemporary culture that has resulted due to this, and the opportunities this has presented for our profession. Recently, while I was attending a training on the future of healthcare, I heard a future strategist say something really interesting that caught my attention. She said that 70% of an organization's time and resources must be allocated to responding to the needs of today, but that 30% of those resources have to be dedicated to innovating for the future, or organizations will be left behind. I would like to argue that the same is true for our profession and our individual social work practice, regardless of the sector that we work in. I know that as a result of today's presentation, we will all consider how we are spending that 30% of our time preparing for the future, and I'd like to welcome Dr. McEnroy.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to move the laptop up so that I can... Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Good noon after everyone. So thank you for the very warm welcome, Vanessa. I'm trying to get it to... Oh, there we go. I always say I'm the social side of technology, not the tech side of technology. I can never get it to work for me. So as was said in the introduction, I'm here today to talk to you all about social work practice in a digital world, particularly looking at professional identities, ethics, and opportunities. And so as was mentioned, before I moved to the States last summer, I was a lifelong Torontonian and did all of my undergraduate and graduate education, including a master's and a PhD in social work at the University of Toronto. And my primary area of expertise is with LGBTQIA youth and their use of technology to facilitate their well-being, identity development, resilience, and their community engagement and advocacy as well. But another very significant area of research and practice and teaching for me is in the area of integrating technology into social work education and practice. So before I left Toronto last summer, I delivered a course at the Factory and Wintosh Faculty of Social Work on technology and practice to MSW students. And I'm actually currently in the process, going through the administrative process at, you have to say that it's super important apparently, that I say that the Ohio State University College of Social Work. I'm developing a course on for BSW students on technology and practice, and actually doing as part of that, some app and platform building to get social workers involved in the idea that we can also be designing these technologies and contributing to their development. So what I'm going to be doing today is a very rip-roaring ride through social work technology and practice. I can't cover everything in an hour, particularly not in a significant level of detail. As I said, I teach whole courses on this topic, and often then I'm still cutting things out. But what I really hope today is to introduce you to a couple of select few considerations related to technology and practice that you might find relevant to you in your very many contexts of practice, as well as provide some resources that you might find helpful as you continue your learning on this topic. So it looks like my formatting is screwed up a bit, but the rapid spread of digital technologies, as Vanessa mentioned, really does constitute a monumental shift in contemporary culture. So the way in which, I'll talk more about this later, but the way in which we communicate and engage with each other, the way we make decisions and connect, all of that is changing. And that really does necessitate a proactive response by social workers and social service organizations. So it's a little bit of an introduction to sort of technology in Canada. Nearly all Canadians between the ages of 15 and 44 are on the internet on a daily basis. And of those in the age group 45 to 74, the vast majority are also using the internet daily. And then even in that 75 plus category, that's actually one of the most rapidly growing demographics in terms of internet access. And the vast majority are accessing the internet at least a few times a week in that demographic. And in Ontario as a whole, 92% of people have at least some regular access to the internet. And that statistic is actually from 2017. So I would guess if we asked today, that number would be continuing to increase. And along with this sort of ubiquitous growth in technology access and usage, we're also seeing a shift in the way people are using the technology. And the biggest sort of point there is around the shift towards mobile devices, with about 3/4 of Canadians using a smartphone. About half use a tablet, so an iPad or some other kind of tablet. A large majority use laptops. So we're seeing this kind of continued access. I'm sure there's very few of us in the room right now that don't have a cell phone tucked away in a pocket or a bag. So we're constantly connected to the internet. And that's really shifting the way we engage with the world. So what we're really seeing is dissipating digital divides. So for a long time, there was very much a have and have not model of technology access and usage, particularly to high speed internet access. But so we're seeing a decrease, right? Across the board, technology is increasing, internet use, social media use is increasing. But it's very important for us as social workers to recognize that those digital divides do still exist, and we need to be paying attention to that in practice, particularly for particular client populations we might be working with. So for example, there's still inequities in access in low-income populations, rural populations. An example is there's still issues around the cost of high-speed internet access in rural or less accessible areas. When I gave all those stats before about internet access, that's basic internet access, right? That doesn't mean they have high-speed access necessary to access an online counseling program or whatever, right? So we're still seeing those inequities in access, and we need to be attending to them. There are a number of initiatives to get devices and internet access to some vulnerable populations that we might practice with. So for example, youth in the child welfare system, there's been a big push around internet access for homeless populations, particularly homeless youth, new Canadians, but we still see those digital divides. So really, as I said before, technologies have fundamentally changed the way people communicate with each other, the way they communicate with us as service providers, the way they make their decisions, right? With Google at hand, making decisions. Again, that's going to impact how they make decisions related to their health, their mental health, and other concerns they might have. And it's really changing how they engage with the world and engage with their multiple lived environments. So it's all changing, and it's all intersecting with social work. So one of the topics I'm going to be covering today is around professional and personal identities and how we, as professionals, need to navigate that. Sorry, my notes are on paper, so I'm flipping around. So my big takeaway today, if you take nothing else away from, because I'm going to be hammering this home in multiple different ways, is about being proactive when it comes to technology and how you engage with technology in your personal and professional life. And that is thinking proactively about your digital footprint. So that is everything connected to your name online. So that's everything you might post on Facebook or that someone else posts and tags you in. Every image you post, every image a friend posts, again, that has you in it. It's everything, any sort of online articles you comment on or online groups you belong to. It's not just you. It's not just the content you post or that is directly tagging you. It's also what content you're connected to because of who you're connected to in your online social networks. So it's basically everything that could be connected with your name. So things your friends post about you, but also things your friends might post that's not about you, but is connected to you because you're connected to them. And interestingly, it's not just you. So if anyone might have a more common name, I'm relatively lucky. There seems to be no other Lauren McEnroys on the internet. But I used to give a shortened version of this presentation to master's students at U of T, Masters of Social Work students. And I had a student come up to me at the end and say, my name is, and it was very common, first and last name. He said, there's someone on the internet who's from Toronto, actually I think exactly the same age as this student, vaguely fit his physical description and had a very notable online presence. And this student said, this person is posting, and every time someone goes and looks for me online, they find this person, and this person is not, the content that he is posting is not consistent with my values or the values of social work. So what do I do about this? So he and I really had to strategize around how he could actually actively build his digital footprint to distinguish himself from this other person and could then direct people to the content he had created, which was consistent with him and his values and the values of the profession. So it's sort of everything that can anyway be connected to you online. Because one of the biggest problems I see is social workers not attending to the scope of both their public comments, but also comments they think are private, and not thinking about the potential consequences of sort of the reach of that content. And I'll speak to that more in a few minutes. So, and it's not just your professional, because it's not just your professional digital footprint. It's also your personal one, right? It's your personal Facebook page, it's your personal communications, and not understanding that personal on the internet doesn't mean it can't become part of your professional profile causes concerns. Because your clients will be looking for you. So this is a study of psychotherapists, but so including social workers, but I see this in all fields of practice, right? I see this in child welfare. It doesn't matter what context of practice you're talking about. These stats are just good, clear ones, but we are across the board seeing clients looking for their providers. So in this study, 70% of clients found personal, so not professional information, personal information about their provider online. Of those, the vast majority went looking for it on purpose, and most did not tell their therapist that they'd found that information. About 55% found that information through social networking sites. By far the most common way was just plugging the provider's name into a search engine, right, like into Google. And then, again, a large majority return to look for updates. So they're not looking for you once at the start of service. They're looking for you multiple times. So this is the kind of information they found. This isn't the whole list, but about 60% found information on their provider's family. And a lot of the times, that's how they were finding the information. So you may think your profile's locked down. Is your partner's profile locked down? You have adolescents, teenagers at home? Is their profile locked down? Because a lot of times, the client was finding the information through, who you're connected to, who your online social network is. About half found their provider's home address. Almost half found personal photos about their provider. So again, not professional headshots, personal photos. About a third found information about their dating and relationships. And also a lot of times it was, again, a friend of a friend. So a client could be a friend of a friend, right? So you may share a friend in common or a social network in common. And again, I'll talk about that a little more later. So my overarching advice, think once before you act, twice before you speak, and 3 times before you put anything on the internet, right? Because mindfulness and emotional regulation are not just skills we teach our clients, they are skills we need to practice for ourselves around, and I'm going to, again, provide some advice around sort of things to think through as you go about, because I'm not saying leave the internet. We just need to recognize that anything we post anywhere, whether we think it's anonymous or not, that there's the potential that our clients will see it. There just is. You never know who can see something, if your privacy settings might change all of a sudden, or if your friend in your social network will screenshot something and send it on somewhere else, right? We can't control where the content goes once the content is there. But don't power down. Now that I've scared you a little bit, the answer is not to vanish from the internet. It is increasingly important to have a professional online presence, and it's increasingly important for us as human beings to maintain social connections, right? We get a lot of personal and professional value out of engaging online, and I'm not saying that you should stop. I'm saying be thoughtful, be proactive about it. Sorry. Because that same study around looking for personal information about providers, 92%, so almost all clients, found professional information about their therapist online, with most of them finding it intentionally. So that is your professional qualifications, your business address, your training, the client populations you serve. And those things are really valuable. They actually make clients more likely to feel comfortable coming to see you. So it's not, I don't want, you're all fiercely on your phones deleting your Facebook account. That's not the answer. Because you are the one that cultivates your online presence, right? How you portray your work and the issues you care about to the outside world really does shape your career and your reputation. So being proactive about your digital footprint means paying attention, right? And deciding ahead of time what you want your online presence to be, and then taking steps to be consistent with that decision, right? So the reason I can't tell you to do this, 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 and this is because all of our digital footprints and what we're comfortable with in terms of our online presence is going to vary, right? It varies based on our personal preference, on the client population we work with, on our personal and professional circumstances, what our family is comfortable with. So there's no one right answer to the way you should portray yourself as a professional and as a whole person on the internet. But what I'm saying is that you need to be proactive about this and decide how you want to be represented. And then again, take steps to be consistent with that. And things you post in any context should be consistent with what you're comfortable with. And that's, in both professional and personal contexts. So here are the kinds of things that you can do with technology that are very beneficial. You can find opportunities and articulate your professional skills and capabilities, right, for new positions or new professional connections, reaching out to new clients or to clients on behalf of your organizations. And you can represent yourself as a well-rounded individual. So I have a lot of people come to me and say, well, so I'm a social worker, that's the job I do 40 hours a week, but I also have a food blog, or I also have a side hustle where I sell the things I knit. And I tell them, you can do that. You can be a whole person. You can have personal interests. You can have a personal presence on the internet. But you need to recognize that personal content can immediately become part of your professional presence as well. So again, just thinking through and being cautious. And you can use the internet to promote yourself and the profession and the values that we hold. So here are the kind of things, these are not all, but some of the basic things that you can do to address some of these challenges. So one of the things I always recommend is that you distinguish between your personal and professional accounts. Okay, so that is not just, so it might be that you have two Facebook pages, right? One that you have that's for your family and the people you went to high school with, and one that's for your professional connections or to reach out for the ads, say if your organization's doing advertisements to clients or whatever. But what is even better is to pick platforms. So Facebook is personal, Twitter is professional, Instagram is personal, LinkedIn is professional. And you decide which ones are, and you set the privacy settings to match that, and you make those choices, and then the content that goes on those platforms should reflect the purpose of those platforms. You need to regularly review the privacy settings on all your social media accounts. So set a calendar alert every 3 months or every 6 months, whatever makes sense to you, to look at all your social media accounts, logged out of them, and see what someone just looking for you can see. Because platforms say they'll tell you ahead of time when they change privacy settings. They often don't, or something you didn't realize had a different setting set on it. So regularly review your privacy settings and review, again, those social connections, right? Are you still comfortable with all these particular people having access to this content? And if not, then maybe you need to make a change. Google yourself. Google yourself regularly. Even better, set a Google alert for your name. It's super easy to do, it's free, and every time your name pops up on the internet, you'll get an email telling you that it's popped up somewhere. And then just keeping in mind professional self-presentation, right? So what your email address is. Again, around pictures. It doesn't mean it only has to be a headshot, right? But just thinking about, again, if those pictures on your personal page were to become available, are you comfortable with your coworkers, your boss, your clients seeing that information or seeing that image? And regularly delete outdated content. So I'm of the generation where I started using Facebook in undergrad, right? Do I want my current colleagues who are friends with me on Facebook to see the pictures I posted in undergrad? Again, thinking about how you want to represent yourself online, that how you've decided you want to cultivate your digital presence, and if the content doesn't fit that, get rid of it. Because the only reason someone would be looking for it is probably the wrong reasons, right? So even if you think it's buried way back in your Facebook, just get rid of it. You don't have to worry about it. It doesn't mean it's gone from the internet, but it makes it harder to access. So some of the things you shouldn't do. Don't ignore the problem. As I mentioned, there's a lot of benefit to having an online presence, so you shouldn't vanish from the internet. But if you pay attention to your online presence, you'll be more likely to notice potential issues before they blow up in your face, right? So if you can be, again, proactive about this, it means that you'll know and you'll be comfortable with what your presence looks like. And then if something happens, it shouldn't, because you know that even if that picture becomes publicly available, I'm good with that. I thought about it already. Oop. So some of the questions you should be thinking about and asking yourself. So when you type up that post that you're furious at someone, right? And you're typing up your post, and before you hit that post button, weigh the benefits and the costs. So what are your intentions? Why are you posting this piece of content, this image, this bit of text, whatever it is you're posting? Why are you doing it? What's your intention? And what are the risks of posting this content? So again, I'm not telling you that any one piece of content you don't have the right to post. I'm saying just take a second, take a breath, again, practice that emotional self-regulation, and think, why am I doing this? And do I want to be doing this? Is it consistent with this presence I'm trying to have? Consider the narrative, not only how you perceive what you're saying, but how others could perceive it from a distance and lose the context. So I think she might be in this room, but I have a friend. I was standing in 3 feet of snow in a snowbank in downtown Toronto in January because the subway was down. And I was furious. And I, of course, had my phone at hand, and I typed something up I actually thought was relatively innocuous, right? So the way I considered the narrative is it wasn't problematic, right? It wasn't a concern. So I posted something on my personal Facebook. And my friend was kind enough to directly message me and say, I don't think this is what you meant, but this is how I'm interpreting what you said without the context of I'm standing in the snow, I'm angry at the city planning and the TTC, right? So I was able to take that content down. It wasn't a big deal, but it's not only how you understand what you're posting, it's how others are going to read it, losing all the context or often around your statement. And consider the potential impact on you as a professional, but also on others, on your colleagues, on your clients, on your organization, on the profession. So hopping into a related topic, which is ethical considerations. So today I'm going to be talking about ethical considerations in pretty broad strokes, and mostly posing questions for you to consider in practice, because the difficult thing, again, about this is that specific situations have to be addressed specifically when it comes to technology. And I can't tell you how to practice with technology. All I can do is to encourage you to be thoughtful and intentional as you're doing it. So this is a very truncated version of the Code of Ethics. I couldn't fit the entire thing on a slide. But just like we do in any area of practice, we need to be using the Code of Ethics from the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers as our framework for decision-making related to technology. I think sometimes technology can seem scary, overwhelming, like we don't have the skill to deal with it, but really it's just a new context in which all of these ethics still apply. It's just how they're applied looks different. So these are some of the things that I would highlight around challenges to technology, which is the best interests of the client and how we maintain that when thinking about technology in practice, respecting the intrinsic worth of persons, particularly our clients. Protecting confidentiality is a huge issue when it comes to technology, and not providing services in a manner that discredits the profession or diminishes the public's trust in the profession. So there are, even as I'm telling you, have a digital presence, there are always liabilities to a digital presence. For example, your organization may have a Yelp page, right? Or have a Google review page. And clients may post publicly available comments that breach their own confidentiality. Or clients may post comments or messages with immediate concerns or in crisis, or email you with them, or text you with them, or whatever. And it's how do you handle that, right? And the best way to be handling that, again, is to be thinking about it before it becomes a problem. So a big focus should be around establishing digital boundaries. Sorry. So you don't have to engage in digital communications as professional social work. It's becoming more and more not an option, but you can have a very limited scope of digital engagement, right? Maybe just internal emails within your organization, that's all you're comfortable with. But if you do decide to have a broader professional digital presence, you need to be establishing boundaries in your digital communications with clients. And that a lot of social workers find it very helpful to establish that policy in writing. So to have something written that you can share with the client at the beginning of services and talk through with them what, for example, how often you answer emails, what is your response time for text messages, what issues are you willing to discuss via technology and digital communication, and what do they need to keep and hold and bring to the next session. So maybe you're willing only to discuss sort of scheduling or process issued stuff, right? And then you tell them, and they know, they have it on a sheet of paper ahead of time, they know that you have a 48-hour response time for emails, that you will only discuss this, this, and this via email, that anything else needs to wait. A lot of social workers also find it helpful to establish a social media policy, particularly. So it might be something like, I have a policy not to friend or follow clients on social media, or to have them friend and follow me. So again, the client or the population you're working with will know what to expect ahead of time. it can, and then that can set you up well to avoid a lot of the problems that might otherwise occur. But even if you set up all the sort of boundaries in the world, interactions with clients can and will happen unintentionally online. It's just it used to be running into your client at the grocery store or a restaurant. Now it's running into them on the internet. So the question becomes, how do you plan to deal with it? So